Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And Today I am high spirited, unlike last time. Last time I was forcing myself to record a video to do a reading. I don't know, something had happened. I was not really very happy. Uh, not really very interested in reading. Then something happened. Something this happened that I celebrated this festival called Holi. Holi is the festival of colors, and it was very spirited. My sister came over. It was nice. It was memorable. I had good food. I had good time. Now I'm very high spirited. I got time because it was a holiday. I got time to read this novel. Beforehand, I was reading this novel like like with you only. It was my first hand experience with you only. That's why reading was little bit, you know, not very um continuous. Now I have read something, like I have read until chapter 4. So we will try to do this thing that I will read beforehand so that I will be able to, you know, sing to you in a better way and like read out better. So let's get to it. I just need to put my timer over here and yeah, wait. Uh, I need to put my timer. I will put a 45 minutes timer and yeah, we will get to it. I'm very good spirited today. I'm really in very good mood. Okay, 45. 45 and this is okay. I have started timing. She got a lot. Oh, I'm going to continue from where we left off yesterday. She's got a lot of nerve showing her face here, if you ask me. Jim's wife, Mary, had observed caustically, watching Ella Prager talking to the preacher before the today's service. In a fitted black shift dress, a patent leather boots, and with her long blonde hair tied back severely in a single too tight braid, Mimi's granddaughter had certainly come a long way from scruffy old boy tomboy kid the locals remembered. She couldn't hardly not come, replied Jim. She's family after all, next of kin, and this is her land now. Not for long, Mary Newsom sniffed. You think she's going to want to hold on to this place now she has her fancy pants city life? She will sell just as soon as she gets an offer. You mark my words. Maybe, said Jim. Jim Newsom couldn't find it in his heart to judge Ella Prager as severely as his wife or the rest of the valley for that matter. It must have been, I'm sweating a lot. It must have been tough growing up out here with only Mimi for company. Both parents dead, no TV, no friends, no fun. Little wonder the girl had turned out strange, withdrawn, brittle. That kind of loneliness wasn't healthy for a young person, or any person for that matter. Ella Prager took the urn from the preacher's clammy hands and solemnly carried it to the foot of the oak tree. Her grandmother had loved this tree. Ella would watch her stroking it sometime, running a garnered hand up and down its ancient bark affectionately as if it were a pet dog. It got more affection than me she ever showed me, Ella thought. But she wasn't bitter. Mimi Prager was who she was, a survivalist, a loner, who had chosen a life completely at one with the land. She had taught Ella the things she knew: how to chop down a tree, how to fix a roof and build a wood, how to start a fire, shoot a rabbit, gut a fish, and clean a gun. She had tried to teach her how to pray. Ella knew that her grandmother had loved her in her own reserved, uncommunicative way. She had done her best to raise her dead son's only child, a burden she never asked for. When Ella was 11, a woman had come to cabin. She was from social services, Ella now realized, although back then nothing was explained. And after woman's visit, Mimi had reluctantly allowed Ella to attend the school in the nearest town. It was a 2 hour journey there and back, involving three buses and one long walk along frightening unlit road. And it was Ella's first experience of life outside of ranch. Of television and internet, of different clothes and cars, of pop music and fast food restaurant. I have the colors from Holi festival of fast food restaurants and people, so many people. Ella observed all of it with a sort of detached wonder, like a visitor on a day trip to an exotic zoo. But while she excelled academically at Valley High, socially she never fit in. She never tried to fit in, her teachers believed. So Ella brought home reports with words like aloof and arrogant mingled in with other less damning adjectives: gifted, exceptional. Her language skills, in particular, were extraordinary, including a pronounced talent for computer language, the newly voguish coding that was becoming so highly prized for California colleges. Unfortunately, Ella's grandmother did not approve of computer science for reasons that again were never explained to Ella, and those classes were dropped. But Ella's GPA remained stellar, even as she struggled with social skills intensified. Ostracized by her peers at school for her old fashioned clothes and standoffish manner, with the exception of boys who flocked to sleep with her, delighted by Ella's matter of fact promiscuity when she hit puberty, and her complete disregard for the concept of reputation, so important to the other high school girls. Ella's isolation intensified. She lived in two worlds: the world of school, the world of Mimi's ranch, but didn't fit into either of them. Mimi's horror when Ella accepted a place at Berkeley took Ella by surprise. She assumed her grandmother would be happy and proud of her achievement, but once again she seemed to have missed all important signal. But I thought you wanted me to go to school, Ella said imploringly. What on earth made you think that? Her grandmother wailed. You can't go to city, Ella. I need you here. But you always encouraged me to study. Not so you would leave. After everything I have done for you, Ella, what for then? For yourself. Mimi banged a whiny fist on simple kitchen table that two women had eaten on every day for last 13 years. To fulfill your God-given potential, not so that you could run off to one of those dreadful godless colleges and expose yourself to to Granny, Ella had shouted back in a real loss of temper. To life? To danger, the old woman replied, shaking a finger at Ella. Danger. Feeling the clay urn in her hands, that conversation came back to Ella as though it were yesterday. What danger? had her grandmother been so afraid of on her behalf? What fate in the city could possibly be worse than the slow death by suffocation of life up here in the ranch, in the middle of nowhere? Especially these last few years, when it didn't even rain. Even God, it seemed, had abandoned them. Turning around just once to look at the group of mourners assembled on the hillside, Ella wondered what these people were doing here. Most of them she recognized vaguely as owner of neighboring ranches or faces from church or the store, but not one of them really knew Mimi or her. They weren't friends. Ella's grandmother didn't do friends. Especially as a result, Ella had never acquired the skill of getting people to like her, of forging bonds of affection the way other people seem to do so effortlessly. Instead, like Mimi, she tended to say exactly what she thought, blurting out observation or responding to question with blunt honesty that frequently landed her in trouble. There was one man among the mourners whom Ella did not recognize. Standing at the very back in the dark suit and mirrored sunglasses, other than Ella herself, he looked like the only person present in the city clothes, and he looked as out of place among these people, farming folk, as a unicorn in a cowshed. He was tall and slim, and when he took off the sunglasses off, could see he had a classical handsome face, like a model from a men's clothing catalog. Strong jaw, tanned skin. She wondered briefly what he would be like in bed before refocusing on his identity. Maybe he's a real estate agent come to make an offer on the ranch. Ella thought. It didn't occur to her that such an approach at an funeral service might be considered insensitive, even offensive. The man's presence made her curious, not angry. Unscrewing the top of the urn, Ella peered inside at the dust, all that was left of grandmother. Not even the hardy, rugged Mimi Prager could outrun old age forever. These ashes were now the sole remnants of Ella's entire family, in fact. With more violence than she intended, she flung out her arms, scattering the ashes in the wind. Mimi's neighbor gasped at this abruptness of the gesture, the shocking lack of ceremony. Ella sensed their disapproval but chose to ignore it, turning and walking purposefully back up to the hill towards the cabin. Her cabin, now, with her purse swinging jauntily over her shoulder, the empty urn in her hand. Like she's throwing out the trash, Mary Newsom whispered to Jim, shaking her head disapprovingly. The small gaggle of ranchers closest to Mary murmured their agreement. Poor Mimi, after all she did for that girl. Come on now, let's not be too quick to judge. Grief takes people in different ways. And Jim Newson reminded them, remember, that young lady lost just about everybody. Inside the cabin, Ella hurried to the bathroom and locked the door behind her. Sitting down on the toilet seat, she slumped forward with her head in her hands and massaged her throbbing temples. Please, no, not now. Not with all these people here. The headache she woken up with this morning was coming back, although thankfully not as strongly as before. This morning was so often lately the white noise inside Ella's skull had been deafening, to the point where she could not get out of the bed. And when she did, finally, stagger to her feet, an overwhelming nausea had seen her staggering to the bathroom in her tiny Mission District apartment, throwing up the entire contents of her stomach. It's It's a brain tumor, Ella had informed her doctor 2 weeks ago, sitting in his plush corner office at San Francisco St. Francis Memorial Hospital. It's growing, I can feel it. It isn't a brain tumor. How do you know? Ella demanded. How can you possibly know that? Because I'm a neurologist. Even so, and because I have comprehensively scanned your brain with very latest technology, there is no tumor. You have made a mistake. The doctor laughed. No mistake, I assure you. Yes, you must have made a mistake. He looked at his patient curiously. Do you want to have a brain tumor, Miss Prager? Ella thought about this for a moment. On the one hand, a brain tumor was a bad thing. Brain tumors could kill you. I don't want to die. On the other hand, a brain tumor might be an explanation for all the crazy shit going on inside her head. The headaches and the vomitings were only part of it. The part Ella had told her doctor. It was the rest of it that really scared her. Voices, music, high frequency throbbing that sounded to Ella like some sort of coded transmission. That stuff had been going on for a long time. As long as Ella could remember, honestly, although in the recent month it had gotten a lot worse. If I don't have a brain tumor, I'm crazy. I must be. Would you like to talk to someone? The doctor asked, his amusement shifting to concern. A psychologist, perhaps? Oftentimes, the sort of symptoms you describe can be brought on by stress. I could refer you to, but Ella had already gone, running out of his office, never to return. The next day, her grandmother died, peacefully in her sleep. Were you close? Bob, a shy, balding, middle aged man who worked at coffee shop near Ella's work and was the closest thing she had to a friend, asked when Ella told him. She was my closest relative, yes. Sorry. Ella responded, my parents are dead. Sure, but I mean emotionally. Were you close to her emotionally? Ella looked at him blankly. She liked Bob, but found him strange. Evidently, he felt the same way about her. Because when she suggested they sleep together months ago, he declined, even though he wasn't a homosexual. I'm married, Ella, he explained. I know, she smiled. So you like having sexual intercourse with women? For some reason, Bob found it funny. Well, yeah, he laughed. I do. I am a woman, Ella pointed out, with an endearing case closed finality to her tone. You are a woman, Bob agreed. A very beautiful woman, and I'm flattered. I mean, I appreciate the offer. But you don't want to have intercourse with me? Okay, firstly, just a little FYI, people usually don't use the word sex. People usually use the word sex. Intercourse kind of sound like a biology textbook. Right, said Ella. She had been told this before, but her grandmother had always been stickler for proper terminology and old habits were hard to break. And secondly, it's not that I don't want to have sex with you, Ella. It's that I'm married. My wife would not be happy at all if I did that. Ella looked even more perplexed. But your wife won't know. She won't be there with us, will she? None of us will be there, said Bob, who seemed to have accidentally stumbled into an episode of The Twilight Zone. Because you and me sleeping together is really not a great idea. Just out of interest, is this how you usually? I mean, have you asked other guys you don't know that well if they want to, you know, have sex with me? Ella offered helpfully. pleased to have remembered the phrase "do jar." Yeah, I don't know. Italian, I guess. Bob nodded. Sure, said Ella. How have they responded? They do want to. The married ones do, unless they are homosexuals. Okay, said Bob, rubbing his eyes. You know, you can also say gay. Mimi would have hated that, thought Ella. Her grandmother hadn't exactly been evolved on LGBT rights. I'm tired of hearing about their rights, the old woman used to say. We should be talking about their wrongs. I have actually had intercourse, sex with 114 people. Ella informed Bob matter of factly and not with a touch of pride. His eyes widened. 114? Wow, that's a solid number. Again, just some friendly advice. You don't actually need to share that kind of personal information with everyone. I'm not sharing it with everyone. Ella smiled. Just you. Could I have another latte? If she and Bob weren't going to have intercourse, then she might as well enjoy another hot beverage with almond syrup in it. After this conversation, for reasons Ella didn't fully understand, Bob began taking a more active interest in her welfare. It was Bob who explained to her that she would have to organize some sort of service for her grandmother. He even offered to drive her out to the cabin if she needed company or shoulder to cry on. You mean I have to go myself? Ella sounded surprised. You don't have to go, but you are the next of kin, and she left you the ranch. So, yeah, I would say it's sort of expected. Expected by whom? By everyone. Like who? Bob tried another tack. Your grandmother would have wanted it. Would she? I expected so. Okay, but she's dead now. Yes, I know she's dead, Ella. But she raised you. This is your chance to say goodbye. Ella frowned, like a mother being forced to explain something painfully simple to a child. You can't say things to dead people, Bob. That's ridiculous. Still, in the end, Ella had taken Bob's advice because he was her friend and because he understood the world better than she did. She would arrange today's service and posted notices in the local paper and had a caterer provide sandwiches and drinks and worn the black dress Bob's wife Joni suggested and carefully listened to Bob's instruction on how to behave. Just scatter the ashes, and if you can't think of anything else to say to people, just say thank you for coming. So Ella had driven out here on her own, despite her terrible headaches and having to pull over to the side of the road to vomit, and despite her sadness that this was not her chance to say goodbye to her grandmother, whom she loved. She missed her chance to say goodbye, just like she missed it with her parents. And now she was all alone in this world and losing her mind, and she did not even have a brain tumor to explain it. And now here she was sitting in this tiny bathroom with the timber walls and framed Bible verses hanging over the basin with this cabin where she grown up so lonely she almost died. I almost died. I would have died if I stayed here. Anybody could. Why couldn't Mimi understand that? A knock on the door broke her reverie. Ella, it was the preacher, the reverend, something. Ella couldn't remember anymore. Are you all right in there, my dear? Your guests are starting to head inside. I know people want to offer their condolences. Ella splashed cold water on her face, popped two ibuprofen from the bottle in her purse. Opening the door, she pushed back the preacher and hurried back out to the porch, looking for the man in the suit. If he made Ella an offer for ranch, she would consider it. But he was nowhere to be seen, not outside or milling around the food tables with the rest of the locals. Bob was wrong. It had been a mistake to come back here. Ella might be different, but she wasn't stupid. She could feel people's eyes crawling over her, disliking her, disapproving her, just as they had when she was growing up. Ella had no memories of her life before she came to live with Mimi, other than sensorial ones. The smell of her mother's perfume, the cool touch of her hand, and so different to warm, bear like grip of Ella's father. When Ella was 4 years old, her parent had sent her to stay with her grandmother while they traveled abroad together for a job. It was supposed to be for a few months, but they were killed in a car accident and never returned. Ella spent the rest of her childhood there in the cabin, yet it had never been home. Home was a place Ella could never reach, a place where her parents were still alive. Just when she saw him, the man in the suit, closing the old wooden gate behind him as he hit the button to unlock his car, a sleek two-door Lexus had looked even more out of the place here than he did, if that were possible. Hey! Ella called out to him from the porch, but the man didn't register. Her voice must have been lost in the wind. Hey! Hold up! She set off and ran back down the hill past the oak tree where Mimi's ashes lay scattered towards the gate. But before she was even halfway there, both man and the car had gone. He a friend of yours? Jim Newson asked her when she got back to the house, nodding in the direction of the departed car. No, Ella replied, still panting from the run. Her headache, thankfully, was receding again, but the idea of playing hostess to Mimi's uptight neighbors for the next 2 hours still filled her with dread. At least Mr. Newsom wasn't as bad as some of them. Women were the worst, generally. Do you know his name? The old man pressed. Ella shook her head. No, I have never seen him before. Have you? Nope, said Jen. Strange. Drink? He had already poured a generous glass of Jim Beam for himself, now offered a second to Ella. Must be a tough day for you. Ella shrugged, declining the drink. I try not to consume alcohol at social functions, she explained. It makes me uninhibited, and that's not always a good thing. Okay, said Jim. When I'm drunk, I'm more likely to have sex, you see. She elaborated. Bob said, I should try to do that less. Jim Newson choked on his drink, coughing and spluttering until liquor burned the lining of his nose. But his eyes were laughing. If it was sober appropriate, Ella, he hardly dared to imagine the drunk version. Poor God fearing Mimi Prager must have been at her wits' end raising this crazy girl. Oh, he does he? Jim chuckled. Well, Bob sounds like a decent sort of guy. Jim's wife, Mary, waddled over the two of them, stiffly offering Ella her hand. Hello, Ella. I just wanted to say how sorry I am for your loss. Ella looked at her curiously. Mary Newsom hated her. That much was obvious. Yet here she was being kind. Sometimes, often, other people behaved in a way that made no sense to Ella at all. Here, have this. It's an alcoholic drink. Not sure what else to do. Ella pressed the glass Jim Newson had offered her into wife's hand, and then recalling Bob's advice, she smiled and added, "Thank you for coming." Ella Newson stared after Ella as she walked away. Beside her, Jim's broad shoulder began to shake with laughter. We just completed chapter 1. Chapter 2. Need a break. Need a short. I do the midnight reading and need to stay awake, right? That's why that's a green tea. This is not that long. Chapter 2. Ella woke late the next morning with a different kind of headache. The kind you get from drinking half a bottle of bourbon on your own once all the guests and caterers and preachers have gone home, then passing out, fully clothed on your childhood bed. The first thing she was aware was of the light streaming in through every window like an assault. Ella's grandmother had not believed in drapes or blinds. A healthy person rises with the sun was the one of her favorite thing. A lot of Mimi Sprague's nugget of wisdom begin with the words, a healthy person. Most of were variation on the theme of hard work, prayerfulness, and self-sufficiency. A healthy person never lets others to do for them what they can do for themselves. A healthy person keeps a clean gun, clean shoes, and a clean mind. Ella learned early that she was not a healthy person, at least not by nature. She had to work at it. She did work to please her grandmother, but also because, to put it bluntly, there was nothing else to do. Hunting and trapping and whittling and working with her hands became Ella's game. Activity she learned to enjoy because really, what was the alternative? After years of practice, she excelled at them all, an achievement in which both she and Mimi took pride. Look at you, Ella's grandmother used to say, flashing a rare smile as she watched the 8-year-old pop a rabbit from 200 yards. There's not there's not a junior shot in Sans Joaquin country better than you, my darling. Once, when Ella was climbing rocks above one of their favorite fishing pools, Mimi told her she was as nimble as mountain goat. It was one of the happiest moments of Ella's life, a true compliment. Her grandmother praised as sparing and hard won, but it meant everything to the little girl, because of course Mimi was all she had, and vice versa. There had been such love between them in those days. What happened? Crawling out of bed, Ella staggered into the cabin only bathroom, which hadn't been installed until she was 12. Running water had been another grudging concession to social services, and splashed ice cold water on her face angrily as if it could wash away the regret. So much had been left unsaid between Ella Prager and her grandmother, but it was all too late now. Wasted thoughts and feelings and emotions were left to trickle down the drain like water had forgotten faucet. An healthy person never wastes God's water. Peeling off her crumpled funeral dress and black underwear, Ella freed her hair from its disheveled braid and stepped under a cold shower, gasping as the jets pounded into her bare skin like bullets. She had a good figure, toned and athletic with high round breast, counterbalancing her narrow boyish hips. Her hair was dirty blonde and unfashionably long, an old style she oddly reluctant to part with. But it was Ella's face that had really caught people's attention. Hers was a kooky, love it or hate it sort of beauty. Her green, wide set eyes gave her face a look of aloofness when at rest. Her high cheekbones and pointed chins added to the overall feline effect. A childhood fall from an apple tree had left Ella with a permanent kink in the top of her nose, preventing her features from having the sort of perfect symmetry that might have left her looking cartoonishly pretty. Instead, Ella Pegger was what you might call striking. Sexy was another common epithet among those who liked the woman direct to degree that other found terrifying. Pulling on her spare set of clothes, she only brought one change with her, a reminding to herself that she wasn't going to stay in long. Ella made a breakfast of beans and dry curled bacon from leftover in the pantry and drank 2 cups of coffee with powdered milk that she brewed on the stove. When she found a shady spot on the porch, drowned the last of her ibuprofen, which was like trying to put out bushfire with a water pistol, and sat very still for an hour until her headache receded to something close to bearable. Mentally, she began running through her to do list. If she worked hard, a healthy person, she hoped to be able to tie things up, head back to the city tomorrow or the following day at the latest. Before that, Bob had reminded her that she still needed to settle up with the crematorium, and then her main job would be empty out the cabin, packing up any personal or valuable items to take with her, boxing the rest, and cleaning the place from top to bottom so she could lock it up and leave it until she decided what to do. The strange man in suit yesterday had all but convinced her to sell. He probably wasn't even a real estate agent. In any case, Ella was confident that sorting through her grandmother's thing wouldn't take too long. A survivalist to her bone, Mimi Prager had only owned 3 dresses, two for church, one for everyday, 2 pairs of pants, winter and summer, a couple of heavily darned sweater, and overalls she been cremated in. The only book in the house was the Bible, and other than her guns, fishing tackle, a chess set, and few pieces of family china, there were really no objects for Ella to salvage. The one precious photograph of Ella's parent, William and Rachel, on their wedding day, which Mimi used to keep by her bed, Ella had taken long ago and installed it in her own apartment in San Francisco. That picture had been the cause of one of the worst fights she ever had with her grandmother. Ella showed up at the cabin the morning after her college graduation to try and sort things out with Mimi, but the old woman had been hurt and reacted angrily, unreasonably. She wouldn't talk to Ella, wouldn't listen, and when Ella asked for the photograph, Mimi refused to give it to her. It doesn't belong to you, she hissed unkindly, her wizened feature twisting into ugly mask of rage. You can't simply come here and take things, Ella. But they were my parents, Ella yelled back. It's the only image I have of them, the only link. You destroyed everything else. Mimi rolled her eyes. You're not still talking about those clothes, are you? Ella dug her fingernails into her palm so hard she bled. It was one of the things, as she got older, for which she found she could never forgive her grandmother. The suitcase her mother had packed for her when she first came to stay at the cabin at 4 years old, which had contained some of the Ella's clothes and toys and a blanket that, in Ella's memory at least, still smelled of her mom, had disappeared from her room one day while she was at school. When Ella asked me where it was, her mother replied nonchalantly that she got rid of it, or rather burned the contents, as Ella later learned, because it's time to look forward, Ella, not back. What use do you have now for a little girl's clothes? Those clothes, those few items packed with love by mother who believed she would only be leaving her daughter for few weeks, were Ella's last physical link to her parents. And Mimi had taken them and burned them on a whim. Without permission, without thought, it seemed for Ella's feeling. It was almost as if it had been done in anger, although what had anger could possibly have prompted by Ella had no idea, either at the time or later. I am taking the picture. Ella glared at her grandmother. I am taking it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Marching into Mimi's bedroom like an Amazon warrior, she snatched the framed photograph from the dresser. Her grandmother followed, frail arms flapping uselessly, shrieking at Ella's like a trapped animal as she tried to grab the precious object back out of her hand. To her shame, Ella had physically pushed the old woman aside, years of her own pent up rage exploding out of her as she stormed to her car, drove back to Berkeley without a backward glance. The argument was never mentioned again, nor did anyone apologize, as if Mimi's burning of the clothes, the entire incident was swept away, buried, but in Ella's heart, all these things lived. Healthy people perform jobs methodically, starting at the beginning and ending at the end. Ella packed and organized and scrubbed and disinfected the cabin from the bottom up, starting with the kitchen, then the living room, the tiny bathroom, and her own box bedroom. Little more than single built-in bed, a wooden chair, and a sawn off plank that had been served as her desk. To her surprise, she found her mood improving as she worked, exertion bringing a sort of peaceful satisfaction that drove away insistent memories of loneliness and pain. Lifting the stripped rug to the beat out of the dust, Ella pressed down gently on the loose floorboard, her secret compartment where, as a teenager, she had hidden her verboten items as a portable radio, strictly banned all technology. Whether or not it had been invented in 1920s. Trashy romantic novels borrowed from the school library, mostly Jackie Collins with all the sexiest parts double folded at the corners of the page, and a small makeup bag and mirror. Later, Ella had added packets of Yasmin, her contraceptive pill, and miniature bottle of coconut Malibu liquor that Jacob Lister, whose parents run the Prospect Road convenience store, traded her in return for an opportunity to touch her bare breast. An excellent deal, in Ella's opinion. Win win. The board lifted easily, although its contents were long since gone. Ella still felt a nostalgic thrill that this small act of defiance on her part had remained undetected. By 4 o'clock, the entire ground floor was organized and sparkling. A growl from her stomach reminded Ella that she hadn't eaten since breakfast. There was nothing but canned goods left in the pantry, so she opted for a plate of spam, followed by a tin of peaches with condensed milk, all of which tasted oddly delicious. Fortified and delighted by her swift progress, she would definitely be able to lock up and head home tomorrow. Ella climbed the ship's ladder staircase to loft space that had also served as her grandmother's bedroom. For the first time all day, she paused. Here, where the smell of Mimi's skin still lingered on the pillowcase and her shawl still hung from the back of the chair. The magnitude of what she was doing struck Ella I am scrubbing out my childhood, packing away Mimi's life, a huge part of my own, forever. She waited for the sadness to hit her. The grief that she had read about and been told about and been waiting for. But instead, she felt something else, something terrible. She felt a sense of joy, angry, defiant, exuberant joy, survivor's joy. And it swept through Ella's like a wave, lifting her up, filling her lungs with laughter and her limbs with an overwhelming urge to kick and punch and lash out with wild relief. Before she even knew what she was doing, she had taken a bottle of cleaning fluid in her hand and hurled it with full force against the wall, splitting the plastic and splattering the lavender scented bleach over everything within a 5 foot arch. Laughing harder now, she picked up Mimi's solid oak cane and started lashing out with it like some sort of deranged ninja, slamming it to the floor and walls, and then finally jumping on the grandmother's back and jabbing it hard into the ceiling. Most of the roof was made up of split log beams, impervious to Ella's blows. But there was one small plaster section directly over the headboard that seemed to Ella to be positively begging for destruction. With a banshee yell of delight and almightily full arm swing, she connected the cane to the plaster like a bat to baseball. White dust and debris rained down everywhere on the counterplane, all over Ella's hair. Flinging herself back on the bed, she was still laughing when the rest of the plaster gave away. A cast iron strong box, easily heavy enough to kill her, plunged out of the hole she had just created, missing Ella's skull by millimeters. Jesus! For a full minute, Ella stared at the box lying on the bed beside her. The near death experience had sobered her instantly. But if I died, she wondered, how long would had been before any somebody found me? Weeks, maybe months? Embarrassed by her earlier hysteria, her thoughts quickly shifted from herself to the box beside her. We are done with the 45 minutes timer, but I want to continue to two paragraphs. Embarrassed by her earlier hysteria, her thoughts quickly shifted from herself to the box beside her. Clearly, Mimi's must have hidden it. And not just hidden it, but built an entire false ceiling to conceal the thing, to keep it safe. That must mean its contents were either valuable or secret or both. Ella couldn't imagine her grandmother hiding anything illegal. On the other hand, she couldn't really imagine her hiding anything at all. Healthy people are honest and open. There are no secrets from the Lord. It was strange that it took a person dying to find out things about them you never knew. Tentatively, Ella ran a finger over his box clasp. Perhaps there were love letters inside from Mimi's long dead husband Bill, or from someone else, a secret lover. The idea made Ella smile. It would be a relief to learn that her grandmother had not always been such a prude when it came to sex. But it was hard to imagine. Whatever was inside, Ella knew at once. She opened the box, Mimi's secret would be out. It would be too late to go back. She took a deep breath, savoring the sanctity of the moment, and lifted the lid. Yeah, we are completing this. I was right. Some were loose and folded, others slipped back inside open envelopes, all lovingly tied together with length of gingham ribbon. It looked as if there were cards at the bottoms too, flashes of color and glittering glinting out from the beneath of the faded yellow parchment. Carefully, Ella lifted the stack out of the box, placed it on the top of the bed. With a gentle tug, she untied the ribbon. Picking up the first letter and unfolding it as delicately as she could with her long finger. Dear mother, the letter began. Ella's heart was already in her mouth. The letter was from her father. I don't want to argue with you anymore. I know you disapprove of my work and Rachel's, but not everybody else see the world as you do. What we are doing is important, not just for us, but for the world. You think you're protecting Ella with this lie, but you aren't. It's cruel. It's wrong. Please, mother, for her sake, if not for mine, tell her the truth. Give Ella our letters. She doesn't understand how now, but one day she will. Your loving son, Williams. Ella's hand trembled. She read her father's word a second, a third time, trying to decipher every possible drop of meaning from the few short lines. What did he mean when Mimi disapproved of his work? Both Ella's parents had been doctors. How could anybody disapprove of that? They were tending to the poor in India when the taxi they were traveling in was hit head on by a truck, killing them both instantly. And what lie had her grandmother told her? Most importantly of all, what were these letters her father mentioned? Had her parents really written to her? And if so, surely Mimi would have kept those letters. She wouldn't have destroyed those too. Wouldn't she, like she did with suitcase of clothes? Frantic, Ella scuffled through the rest of the stack, opening up letters and quickly scanning each of her own for her own name. Dear mother, next one began. And the one after that, and the one after that. Dear mother, dear mother, dear mother. And then at last there it was. My darling Ella. Ella ran a finger lovingly over the paper as if it were the Holy Grail, tracing each ink letter with infinite slowness. I hope you are doing well and helping Granny as much as you can around the ranch. I know you miss us, and we miss you too, very, very much. I wish I could explain more to you, but it's not safe for you to be with mommy and me right now. One day I hope it will be, but until then, please know you are always, always in our hearts. Your ever loving dad. Ella's eyes welled up with tears. Why hadn't Mimi given this to her? Surely she would have known how much it would have meant. There was no address on the top, but there was a date 2 September 2000. Ella stopped breathing. That must be wrong. That's 2 years after they died. She looked at the date again, staring at it, almost in the trance. Then, reaching down to the bottom of the pile of the papers, she pulled out each of the cards. There were 8 in total. 4 for Christmas, 4 for her birthday. Trembling in disbelief, Ella read them all. Happy 6th birthday. Now you're 7. Cartoon dog on the top hat held up a balloon to the world's coolest 8-year-old. All of them were signed, All our love, mommy and dad. No, Ella said out loud. No, she wouldn't have. She couldn't. She told me they have died. She told me they have died when I was 5. Ella felt her breathing grow ragged. She felt dizzy all of a sudden and sick. Sliding into the edge of her grandmother's bed, she leaned forward with her head between her knees. Breathe in, breathe out. She told me they were dead. Breathe in, breathe out. She lied to me. Ella stood up, then sat down, then stood up again. A cartoon display of indecision. Her head began to hurt again. Pressure building up inside her skull as if some evil spirit were in there, inflating a giant balloon. It wasn't voices this time, or static white noise. Strangely, she never seemed to get those symptoms at the cabin, only in the city, but it was deliberating nonetheless. She needed to read the rest of the letters, but it was impossible. The whole room was spinning and images swarmed before her eyes. I need a doctor, Ella thought, as the pain in her head brought her to the knees and she felt herself edging slowly towards unconsciousness. But there were no phone at the cabin, no cell reception for miles. If only she'd taken up Bob's up on this offer and let him come with her, she could have gone for help. Her last thought was how ironic it would be if she died on the day she found out that her parents were dead after all. And how dared her grandmother died without explaining any of this to her. We are officially at chapter 3, but we will read it tomorrow. And today, signing off, reading with Jamie, Midnight Reading, Sidney Sheldon, The Phoenix. We'll continue tomorrow. Bye bye.